All right, welcome back to the Comics Cultures. My name is Chad, and this evening, like I wouldn't say all of our shows, but most of them is we are spotlighting another Kickstarter, which is being run by Dave Dwonch, who is a friend who I met through the Comic Geek Speak community, and he through there I got some really cool sketches from him. But he is currently running a Kickstarter, so I thought it'd be a great time to catch up with him and find out about his project. So let me bring him in, and we'll continue the conversation that we just had for 15 minutes catching up. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Oh my God, long time no see, Chad. How are you?
Yeah, I know. How's it going? I
Good,
think the
man.
last time, I think the last time was New York Con.
God, you know what? That New York Con was. So I've been telling all my crazy stories. I'm on the press tour, right? But that last New York Comic Con, I got married, and we were on our honeymoon in Italy, and then I was like, well, I have a table at the New York Comic Con. We should just go there. So I had all of my books shipped to a friend who ran my table for a day. And then after our long whirlwind romance, like we come into New York Comic Con, and my wife's like, I'm never going to Comic Con again because, you know, she's living and relaxing on the beach. And now she's got to go sit at a Comic Con with me and talk comics. She was like over it within 5 minutes. So if you ever get married, listeners, go to New York Comic Con first and then fly out of New York to Italy. It's a way better. I'm sure it's a better experience for sure.
Now, I don't plan on getting married again, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
doing 10 years, and I'm trying to do my best. So
Yeah, me too. Me too. I was married once before, and honestly, this is probably the craziest thing anyone said to me, and anyone that isn't in comics is probably like, well, you're an idiot. But like she said, like my first wife said, when we have kids, you're gonna have to stop this comic shit. And I was like, whoa, that's a grounds for divorce. I was like, it was such a broad statement. I was like, does she mean collecting? Does she mean reading? Does she mean making comics? And I was like, well, all three, that's a deal breaker, right? Because comics like have been my life since I was like a wee baby boy.
well, my comic collection is in a storage unit, and I, along with all my He-Man toys and GI Joe and Transformers, and it's a point of contention.
Oh, well, for me, like and this now I will say this. I don't want to say my next wife, and I don't want to say my second wife, but I will say my forever wife.
Mhm.
We we just bought our second house here in Colorado, and it's a bigger spot, and I was able to design one room that is just everything that I love about comics and collecting, and I work from home, so I needed something that was like my womb, my cocoon to sit in for 10 hours a day, right? So I just filled it with like all of the coolest shit in my life. Like you, I've been collecting since I was like a kid. And like for me, you had G.I. Joe and like He-Man, and I had Robotech and Macross and stuff like that. So I have like all of my original toys from when I was a kid back behind me, like old X-Men posters that were on my door when I was a child, all this crazy stuff that like just keeps you young. Like when life beats you down, you look around and you're like, how can life beat you down when you're surrounded by all the things you love?
Well,
Um,
unfortunately, I have to go to my storage unit to be surrounded by the things that.
so you just dive in and just roll around in it because that would
Yeah,
be
I
amazing.
wish. I wish. Well, you kind of hit on what the question I'd like to kind of lead with is what has been your experience with comics as a reader and then also as a creator.
Well, my dad, so we lived in California, Bay Area, my entire life, and my dad worked for Pacific Bell, and he got transferred to New York, and so he was working in New York while we were living in California for like 3 years, and he would come back once a month for a week or a weekend sometimes, and he would bring a stack of comic books, and I just thought my dad was the coolest dude on the planet. I'm like, oh my god, cool, I love it, right? And we used to sit down sit on his lap and I'd read the most inappropriate comics for little kids. Like in 1983, I remember he brought back Wolverine. Well, here, let me see. This Wolverine comic, and I kept it my entire life. Bought it, or he bought it to me, and I read the best of the best, right? He got me a first print of Ninja Turtles 1. Like, and I didn't know my dad wasn't the coolest guy in the planet. We just go into a comic shop and be like, "What's the coolest thing? I'm going home to see my kids." And so they would load them up, stacks of stuff, and we'd read them together. So comics have always been super, super personal because for lack of a father figure for some of my formative years, I had a guy that would drop off comics and we'd read them together, you know? That was super, super cool. So like comics have always been a part of my life. They've always meant more to me than almost anyone I know. Like I've got friends that are historians. Like they get it. They got it. They know every John Byrne panel, every time a character was introduced in X-Men, you know, they're huge Alpha Flight fans, all that stuff, right? But for me, comics were super, super personal. And then when I was like, I don't know, 12, maybe 13, I'd have to do the math on it, but it was 1989 and I went to my first convention alone, right? Like my parents dropped me off and I was able to run around. And I went up to the writer of Captain America at the time. And I was like, "Excuse me, Mr. Grunwald, could you sign this comic for me?" And it was that Captain America bleeding, you know, Cap No More cover, with the Mike Zeck cover, you know. And one of my favorite books. I just loved Captain America so much. And Mark opens up the first page, and there's like a smudge on it, like that. You know, it was all like newsprint, so it's all like shitty. And he looks at it and he tries to wipe it off, and he's like fingering this comic, and I'm like, this is awkward. And he looks up at his assistant and he says, "There's a misprint in this comic. Go find this kid another one." And then the guy, like the kid, was like, "Ugh, really?" And Mark's like, "Yeah, go find this kid a comic book to replace this. This is not the way we do things at Marvel." And I'm like, wow, this writer of Captain America, really, he's got some balls of steel. Like this isn't how we do things at Marvel. Like, what the fuck? So so the kid goes off to go find me this comic book, and I'm standing there just awkwardly, a kid, and Mark notices me kind of fiddling about, not knowing what to do. And he asks me, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, I want to do something in comics. I draw and I write." And he's like, "Well, while we're waiting for this comic, why don't you sit down and I'll teach you everything I know about comic books." And I got to sit with Mark Grunwald for an hour and a half, not knowing he's the editor-in-chief at Marvel. I know he's my favorite writer on Captain America, but I didn't know he wrote Squadron Supreme. I'm a kid. I don't know any of this, right? Mm-hmm. So I tell that exact story last year at a panel at Denver Fan Expo. And Howard Mackey, the creator of Danny Ketch Ghostwriter, sitting next to me. And he's like, "What year was that?" And I was like, "I think it was 88 or 89. And he was like, "Well, in 1990, I became Mark's assistant." And he was like, "That sounds just like Mark Grunwald." He lived and breathed comics. He lived and breathed Marvel comics. And he wanted to nurture the youth that enjoyed comics. And you know, I was blown away by this. We're both almost crying on this panel, remembering Mark Grunwald. And I told everyone it was like a, you know, breaking into comics or Comics 101 panel or whatever it was. And I basically said that these are the experiences that I could only hope to give kids that come up to my table now. Mm-hmm. So it's why I don't stick to R-rated stuff. I mean, you could tell from a lot of my work is very, very R-rated. And then a lot of it is all ages work. Because I feel like I want my audience to grow up with me, like I grew up with Mark, you know? And when people bring their portfolios to me, like little kids, I don't even care. I'll give them little tips and tricks and stuff, you know? So my dad was the first person to introduce me to cool comics, other than like Archie that you'd pick, and G.I. Joe's, you know, sometimes you pick them up at the 7-Eleven or whatever. but Mark was my introduction to what a professional comic book person could be and should be. And that convention where I talked to Howard about it, he introduced me to his kids, and they were like, "So we heard you were talking about Uncle Mark," and I'm like, "This guy was everyone's uncle in comic books, man. What a cool ass dude, and what a cool way to be inspired into doing what I do, you know." So yeah, that's how I was brought into comics.
And well, with a background like that, then you obviously were, going to be, right, getting into the comic books. Um, a little bit about your experience, breaking into the industry. Because I think I remember it was 2006 or so when I first met you, and I think at the time you was Space Time Condominium, maybe. See?
That sounds about right. I think I started that in like 2004 or 5, and then we put the book out in 2006 or something like that. Yeah, it was like basically Rick and Morty before Rick and Morty. Like everyone that I've talked to is like, wow, you really did it with this, multi-dimensional version of a person. And I was just having a laugh. I just wanted to make a really weird sitcom where it was like one dude, just like basically it was Friends, only it was one guy. And I tried to push the limits with that one, but that was probably the last comic I drew like consistently. And it just was one of those things where I realized I had so many stories in this brain, and the hand wasn't going to keep up,
Uh-huh.
So I got to work with a way more talented people than me. That's for sure.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, I got some cool commissions from you during the CGS years. I don't know if you remember any of them.
Were those the Simpsons ones?
Yes.
Those are my favorite. Those are my favorite sketches. I'll go through my Facebook page and my photos sometimes and trying to clean it up, and I see those posted, and I'm like, man, that that Dark Side Desaad is just like a winner, man. Like I really should have drawn Simpsons. At the end of the day, I don't know why I didn't start trying out for that stuff.
And then you also did the Monty Burns as Lex. He's going Lexcellent.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. I loved it, man. That's so. That was when coloring with markers was the coolest thing on the planet. I really love those drawings. I hopefully you still have them.
Oh, I know. Yes, I do. And they're in my they're in a protective slip and stuff. Oh yes, I am not getting rid of any of those. I got during the CGS years. I mean, mainly because I've been priced out of getting commissions anyway these days.
It's real. Oh, by the way, I don't know. Like here's my freaking swear from 2010.
Yeah.
It's on my. I didn't show that to Peter the other day. I should have. That's hilarious. But yeah, you got to take your wins where you can get them.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your current project that you're kickstarting. What is it, and kind of what were the influences behind it?
Yeah, sure. So it's called the Automaton. It's a 100-page hardcover graphic novel that I've launched on Kickstarter. It's my love letter to theme parks and all of the weird shit that you hear about Walt Disney, them saving his brain and all this stuff. I started doing like a lot of meta work. I think a lot of my stuff has been meta for a long time, but with Mind Palace, which was that Brian Fuller comic I did, and I just got another book that'll be out next year called The Loose End that's super meta, and then the Automaton, which is basically the idea is a media mogul he's created his own version of like what Disney is, Disneyland, Disney, so his name is Felix Fable. He has a place called Fableville. It's his theme park. And it's about a little girl that grew up watching him on TV, the fantastic world of Felix Fable, that sort of thing. And she was inspired to become an artist. She basically, spoilers, she's me. She forced her way into art school with begrudging parents, and then dropped out, sort of like me. Like it just learning stuff like that is not my thing. Learning stuff through living is really the way I do it. Not to say that you should drop out of school, kids, but the idea is she drops out of college and then has to find her own way, and then eventually winds up becoming a caricature artist at the park. And then during the 25th anniversary of the park itself, Felix is making a big speech in the tower and falls to his death. And it might to some people look like a suicide, but it's murder. And so she starts sort of investigating and gets embroiled in the mystery itself. But while she's trying to figure out what's going on, the dreamists or the Imagineers place Felix's consciousness into a robot body. And the reason that this robot body was never successful is it was supposed to be autonomous, but it only has 36 hours of battery life. They've tested it a bunch of times. They could never get it right because powering the human brain is it's an impossible thing to do, right? So they put Felix's consciousness into this robot, and he has 36 hours to solve his murder, and that's sort of the beginning of this murder mystery set in a theme park a la Disney. I do a lot of nods to Disney. I'm a huge Disney person. I know that they can be the worst, but they're also the best. So there's a lot of all of that in this, and really, it's my love letter to the creative process. Becoming the person you're supposed to be, what you're meant to do in life. And then, there's a little bit of that creative bitterness that some creators can get. So there are layers to this thing, but I basically decided when I turned like 45 that I would just write things that meant something to me. I could come up with a really good sci-fi story, right? But unless it has an emotional tether that I want to read and reread and re-experience, I don't want to do it. So I think the beginning of my career was like a little bit like a machine gun. Like, let's go. I'm going to give you everything all the time, all at once. And as I've gotten older and had health issues and dealt with my own mortality, it's really just become about putting out good work that's going to inspire people, like Mark did for me. So really, in a nutshell, that's what the Automaton is. And I think it's up there. It's up there with my best work. And I feel like the last 3 projects I've done, the one that's unreleased yet with Titan is it's up there too. Like it's just everything draws from my life and my own experience. And I feel like if you want to get to know me, listen to this. If you really want to get to know me and really see how my brain works, check out the Automaton for sure.
And so, who are you? Who is that? Who are you working with on the project? I mean, you're writing, and who's the artist? And how did you kind of get connected with them? Have you worked with them before? Or
yeah, actually, so Santi, I call him Santi G because his last name is Guillen, and I was calling him Santi Guillen. And then when I met him in person for the first time after 10 years, he said it was Gießen. So the L's are S's in Argentinian Spanish. So we met through his agent years and years and years ago. And I always knew I wanted to work with him. He's like the most versatile artist I've ever seen. Don't steal him from me, people with deep pockets, please. But we worked on the Prom of the Dead, which was the first in a trilogy, and then we did the Broken Circle together. And then in between, I kind of hit writer's block with the third one. It's supposed to be a trilogy. If you're a writer tip, if you are writing something and you don't know how it's going to fucking end, don't call it a trilogy. Because I have so much material after volume 2 that I'm like, how do I wrap this up in a way that's completely satisfying? So while I was working that out, I wrote the Automaton.
prequels and sequels.
Say again?
Prequels and sequels, like Star Wars.
There you go. There you go. I don't want to insult my readership by saying, look, you only have to buy 3 books. Now, no, you got to buy 6 books. So, I was working out a bunch of the storyline for the Broken Circle sequel, which is still nameless, other than I'll probably just call it Spores at this point. My branding on that was so dumb. I'm like, oh, I'm going to call it Prom of the Dead because that's clever, but it's part of a trilogy called Spores. These are the things that happen in your head where you overthink things, and then you're like, oh, simplicity is the best. But I wrote the Automaton, and Santi came to me and he was like, what's next? What are we working on? And I'm like, well, I'm working on this one thing, but I know you're not right for it. I just know you're not right for it, knowing what we've done on these other books. And he told me to give him a shot. And I was like, well, I'm looking for a murder mystery. It's set in a Disneyland park, but drawn like it's a Pixar movie or Pixar design art. You've seen some of that art where you're like, wow, it's like deco and weird. And he was like, well, let me see what I can do. And then he did. And I was like, oh man, I can't imagine anyone else doing it, So he jumped right in. And then I was working on Jenny Zero at Dark Horse at the time, which the 3rd volume we're going to be working on soon too. But my colorist on that is amazing, but super duper slow. Like monthly books is not his jam. And, I think he'd be the first to say it. So I'm not like, I hope it doesn't offend him, but I think he knows that. So I basically said, color this, you have no deadlines. Just do what you will with it. And he was turning in a page or 2 a week, and then 3 pages a week, then 4 pages a week. And then he started getting faster and better at it. And by the end of it, I just got the last 2 color pages last week, and I love that we are done with the book well before the Kickstarter ends. It means that I don't have to stress after the Kickstarter, and I'm not going to break any promises, I guess. I told everyone it was going to be December, and it's going to be probably August. Like that's how quick it's gonna happen. So I feel really, really good about it. But fun fact, when you're working with people from overseas, like Santi, he's answering in perfect English every time we communicate. And we had the opportunity to go to Disney World this year at MegaCon. I was like, they made me a guest, fly in, share the table with me, and we'll go to Disney World and we'll do some research, make sure we have everything right for this book.
Write it off.
Yeah, write it off. He gets there and he speaks not a lick. Well, he speaks better English than I speak Spanish, but it's sort of problematic at this point. I'm like, oh my God, we can't talk. How is this weekend going to go? So the whole weekend I'm talking through the translator, and he's talking to me, and we had the most wonderful time. I mean, just after 10 years of working with someone on now 4 separate projects, because he worked on Mind Palace with me too, which he had never watched a Brian Fuller show. I gave him all the research to do. He was like, we don't even have these shows in Argentina. I sent him some DVDs, and he's like, these don't work in our region players. I'm like, okay, we're screwed here. But he knocked it out of the park. And so we've worked on now, this is our 4th book. And I mean, honestly, we left that weekend riding on such a magical cloud that I just feel like we're going to be at the hip for, a while. I know he's got other projects in the works. I don't want to spoil his thunder, but I know he's working with some big publishers right now, and that's going to help him out greatly. But we both made the little gentleman's agreement, the little nudge that we were going to always work together. So we're working on the next thing, which will probably be the Broken Circle sequel. And then I have another project that is very much in line with the Automaton. And I feel like that's going to be the next couple years for us.
So kind of talking about this Kickstarter, specifically, what kind of rewards are you offering, to for people who decide to back the project?
Well, the baseline is the hardcover, 100-page hardcover, $25. I paid for production on this, and like I told you earlier, it's already done, right? So I've already paid for all of that, So the Kickstarter itself just covers the print cost of the hardcover. So I just thought, well, why don't I make it as affordable for people as possible? And I'm like, wow, even a Marvel 4-issue hardcover is $29.99. So what's the risk in trying this book out? So that's the main goal. We have a limited edition, which looks like one of those old golden books. I don't know if you remember those from when you were a kid, the little gold
Uh,
foil.
I
Um,
think we're the same age, so.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah. So we have it's called the Little Golden Boys version, and the Little Golden Boys. Obviously, it's me. I'm Filipino. Santi is Argentinian, and Arnaldo is Puerto Rican. And when you get us all together, we're the Golden Boys. You know? So there's that version, and then we're doing this really. I like to think it's unique. I don't know how unique it is, but because it revolves around a theme park, we wanted to make all of the reward tiers feel like you were going to the park, you know,
Mhm.
like, so there's a limited edition postcard set. There's like a really plush hand painted, like high quality print that you're going to get. These little, uh, they're pins that look like Mickey Mouse ears, but they're gears. A limited edition pin is going to go to everyone that donates. I actually haven't really made that announcement yet. I was waiting till week 3 to be like, everyone gets one. And then our stretch goals are super interesting too. Like right now on the site, they're mysteries, but if you if we get to a certain amount, everyone's going to get an actual ticket to the park, and everyone's going to get a button that says first visit, a la Disneyland. And then the second unlocked stretch goal is going to be a VIP pass to one of the rides, which isn't open in the comic book. It's we're hinting at it and we're building towards it in the comic, but everyone that gets us there is going to get the VIP pass with a lanyard that looks very much like a theme park lanyard. And then the third stretch goal is going to be an oversized print of the main cover, which I haven't revealed it yet, but it's a wraparound cover. Everyone's only seen the front of it. No one's seen the back of it yet. I didn't want to spoil it for people yet, but it's going to be an oversized print that very much will look like the prints that you see when you're walking through Disneyland. When you walk
Mhm.
through the arches and you go into the park, you see those posters. That's sort of what we're doing with the last stretch goal. It's going to cost a little bit of money to do that. So, like, it's the last stretch goal. But we're really trying to make it feel like if you buy in on this Felix Fable story and Fableville itself, that you're going to get a lot of stuff that's going to reinforce your love and belief of it, right? Something you can take home or share with other people, send postcards to people, like I was here type stuff. Like I'm stoked. I'm really stoked about it. I designed the crap out of this thing. Like it's been in my brain for years, and to see it come out in this way, I'm like, my mind is boggled, you know, like I just like at this point, also my neuroses are playing into this Kickstarter too, where I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to get this money. It's like I'm not gonna get to $6,000, and I'm like, believe in the work, man. Just you know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
have to believe in the work before you can believe in selling the work. Um, so while I'm not getting a lot of sleep these days, I am fully conscious and in full belief of this project. You know what I mean?
Mhm. So, you've run other Kickstarters in the past, and this is something I just like to ask. Are you seeing anything different this time, or any trends that um, maybe you didn't experience last time that maybe you are this time, or I don't know. I don't have the creative gumption to do something that needs to be kickstarted, or probably have the nerves to run a Kickstarter. So,
I it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I every time I do a Kickstarter, it feels like the most painful 30 days of my life. And so I banish all of the negative thoughts from my brain, right? So every time I start a Kickstarter, I start it fresh. Um, I do feel like Kickstarter itself has upped its game. I feel like the ease of launch is better and easier. Like I can have add-ons now. I can add stretch goals. I can do things that previously, I think like my last Kickstarter was Broken Circle. At that point, you couldn't have add-ons. You had to like manually add them on and then communicate to people what they wanted, and it was just a nightmare. So in that regard, I feel like it's much better. But I will say that I feel like there are more Kickstarters, and just without getting political or even social about it, I feel like people might be more hesitant to back things because of the uncertainty of life itself. And that's, everyone's talking, there could be a recession. It's a election year. Everyone has less disposable income because during COVID, we all had too much. Either we were all jobless or we were all living like with subsidized money and or we kept our jobs and we didn't go anywhere because of COVID, right? So everyone had a little bit more like fluff money, it seemed like. So I feel like Kickstarters and I think comics in general are just a little bit more competitive than they were a few years ago. Like I thought we might get funded within 2 weeks. I think it'll probably take 3, if not go all the way to the end. So yeah, the level of stress is prolonged, or I think it will be prolonged because of just the idea that things are different today than they were 4 years ago when I did my last one or whenever I did it. I don't even know. I'm really bad with calendar dates, by the way, Chad. Don't ask me to remember your birthday. It's going to be terrible if I do. I'm going to disappoint you every time.
It was earlier this month, so.
Happy birthday. See, that's perfect. I can't forget it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit harder. And I think everyone's at their game. And I think that's what comics really are. Everyone ups their game. I mean, if you look at the stuff I was doing 10 years ago, except for Cyrus Perkins, which is just the best, like what I was doing with Space Time Condominium, what I was doing with this book called Back in the Day, all these things that, you're getting your feet wet and you're refining your craft over the years. Like, I think everyone has refined their craft so much, and it's just gotten to the point where there's too much good stuff. You can't rise to the top if the top is so deep,
Well, you're really good at providing me with segues for my usual questions. So one of the questions I'd like to ask is,
I didn't read these.
what, with all the experience that you've gained through over the years, what advice would you give your younger self that you know now that you would have liked to have known then? And how do you feel you've grown as a writer or creator?
Oh, well, I mean, okay, so wait, okay, on the count of 3, how old are we? 1, 2, 3, 50.
46.
Okay, so
Same.
yeah, I would say that what I would tell my younger self, younger being formative years, like 18 to 25, I would say try harder, dude. Get more focused. Like you have all this energy and all this creative juice, and you're running around chasing ladies and drinking and partying, and for the most part, like just trying to figure out how to live. Like if I had leaned in a little bit earlier, I would say do that, right? Focus. At 20, in my 20s to 30s, I would say stop putting a time limit on yourself. Like, I don't know if you do this or if anyone listening does this, but I say, well, at 30, I need to be here. I need to be married with kids at 30, right? Well, that led me down a path of like choosing the wrong partner and rushing things that like shouldn't have happened. Those were distractions that affected my career. 40s, I'd say maybe don't start a publishing company. I would say,
Hey, it's not the first time this week that's come up. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, like I need to get those guys in the room. I think I need to reunite with them at Heroes Con, because that's where Action Lab was created. But I think at
Weren't the rumblings of it developing at CGS though?
yeah, you know what happened was we all had a really bad Heroes Con. Early on in my career, they always put my table in the back of the convention, facing the women's room, like the ladies' room. So all I would do is watch ladies come in and out of a bathroom. So I called it Sex Offender Alley instead of Artist Alley. I was like, this is just fucked up, man. What am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to like wave at people coming out of the bathroom, be like, buy my book? This is just it's asinine, right? So I had a bad show that year, and I was like, how am I going to succeed in comic books? And, I don't know if the rest of the guys had the same convention as I did, but we were definitely commiserating over many, many drinks. And you know me, I like a good drink. And it got to the point where I was like, well, why don't we just do this ourselves? Who's telling us we can't do this? And I'm like, I'll be the creative director. Sean Pryor, you're the president, because clearly the most articulate, professional, passionate,
charismatic.
He's the best. He's the best. And then, Sean Gabarine, who's a real quiet dude with a great mind and also a great editor. And then, there were a bunch of people that were ancillary to the conversation. Dave Wachter, who went on to many, many great things and still a good friend of mine.
His Uncanny Valley is awesome.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. He's just the best.
And it shows how much he's grown as an artist, because he's doing his usual very detailed style, but then he's also doing the cartoony.
Yep. It gets to the point where you look at his stuff and you're like, well, basically he can do anything and he's the best. And by the way, when we were in Italy on our honeymoon, we're in Rapallo. It's just a series of cities that are connected through trails, and the only way to get to them is by boat or by train. And I'm walking up to a castle to go check stuff out. And guess who's walking down? Dave Wachter. And he's on his honeymoon. And we basically just walked up, and I'm like, and he was like, Dave? And I'm like, what is going on? So we wound up just talking for about 20 minutes. And, it wasn't like Dave and I were really cool before then. But that's like a weird, odd connection bond that like will always be like, you remember Italy, buddy? So like Dave and I get along really well. But we, he bowed out on the whole idea of Action Lab. And I remember coming up with the name Action Lab. And I was like, we're a bunch of mad scientists. And then Mario Muscar, who we talked about before we started recording, was like, no, it's a dog with a rocket pack. And I'm like, oh, let me draw that. So I drew that. And, the idea was, and I told the eventual owner of Action Lab that if you ever go under, I'm taking all that back. Because I did all the design work, all the concept work, all the logos for Action Lab, all of the logos for the comics, like probably 60% of them I designed. And I'm never getting that back. And nor do I want it back, because it's been tarnished over the years, like right. It's just, it sucks, because I go back to that first bar meeting, and I just think all of the best intentions, all of the best creators, all of the people that I admire the most were in that room, and it just kind of went to hell. You know what I mean? Like, right. So, and then, I spent 10 to 12 years trying to promote other people's work while putting my work on the back burner. So even though I was pretty productive, I could have been way more productive. You know what I mean? Like,
and I understand. That's kind of the when I talked to Sean Pryor, that's kind of his take too. Is he was in the role of being kind of the face of the company, and he wasn't able to create, and that kind of turned him off to or I don't want. I'll have to go back and look at the interview, but it kind of affected him creatively too.
Yeah, I mean, people always ask me like, when are you going to start another company? And I'm like, never. Like, I mean, okay, fuck it, never say never. But Hellbrain is like my studio, right? But I get to work with Titan. I get to work with Dark Horse, Scout. I worked on a book for Image. I wasn't, I wasn't creative, but I was lettering. But, it allows you to do these things that you normally wouldn't necessarily have the option to do if you're running your own company. And At this point, my stuff is so varied in its content, in genre, in demographics, the whole thing. Like everything I do is like so different that like it wouldn't make sense at one publisher. You know what I mean? Even if it was me, it wouldn't make sense. It makes more sense to put the crime book over at Titan, you know, in their crime book line. It makes more sense for the horror book to go to Scout's horror line. It makes more sense for you know the big kaiju book to go to Dark Horse. It just makes way more sense. And I'm not saying that the Automaton wouldn't go or won't go to a publisher, but I wanted for myself to make a hardcover, because who's going to give me the option to make a hardcover right out of the gate? Probably nobody,
Mhm.
right? So I'm like, well, why don't I just do this myself and then go back and now someone else can reprint it as issues and then a soft cover. And if it's big enough at that point, reprint the hardcover.
Mhm.
But for me, I mean, you see my room. Like, I want keepsake collectibles. Like, I don't want comics to be a disposable medium. And I feel like for a lot of people, it is. Like, if you can read a comic on a toilet and that's where you read all your comics, it's already implied that it's toilet material. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what I want out of comics in general.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's why the hardcover for sure.
Well, not to change the subject, but Dave Walker. Um, going back to this, the sketches that I would do with the Simpsons and the DC mashups. I was the first time I got on his list for one of the super shows. I said I would like Sideshow Bob as a Psycho Pirate. Now, so he, I got Sideshow Bob as a pirate. It was cool. I was like, okay, I'm not
Oh,
going to
he
complain.
character from Crisis. He didn't know the Grant Morrison Animal Man psychopath.
Well, yeah, he must have. There must have been a communication glitch somewhere, and then so for the next super show where he had a list, I was like, I want Sideshow Bob's Psycho Pirates. Like, didn't I already do this for? He's like, no, Psycho Pirates from DC Comics. He's like, oh, so I have two Sideshow Bob's as Psycho Pirates.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it
And
is.
again, those are both of them are some of my favorite, sketches. Well, all of them are my favorite sketches, because it was kind of nice just to kind of say, pick two characters, pick a character from each and just mash them up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and honestly, you had a unique take on it. Like, I like when people come up to you asking for sketches, and it's not like draw Harley Quinn or draw the Joker, or you know what I mean. Like there's no art direction to it, and I'm like, well, without some like specificity, I am not going to give you what you want. Like I might be able to draw something like Daniel Warren Johnson does it, where someone will like ask for something and he draws something that's just like this sprawling background and the character's like like an inch tall in it, and you're like, what a beautiful drawing! It's a work of art, but that's Daniel. Probably, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's probably him being like, I don't want to be bored doing this. I'm not
Right.
going to give you exactly what you want because it's going to it's going to tear my soul out.
Hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. So I appreciate your requests. They're the best. They're the best. Maybe in this next, if we both go to this Comic Geek Speak reunion, if they set up tables for sketches, I'll bust out my stuff. I just started drawing again. I haven't lost a step really. I mean, I'm shocked at this, but I haven't
Yeah, I was
really
going to ask you if you were still kind of nurturing that side of your.
like a little bit. It's for fun, Like I have a story that I want to tell that I think suits my style, but uh, my thing is happy wife, happy life, and
Mhm.
for me, to when I worked at Action Lab before that, I was staying up till like 3 a.m. drawing or writing or whatever it is. I made a deal with my wife that I would just get up early and work on creative stuff for a couple hours a day, clock into work, and then by 6 o'clock, I'm spending time with her. So the idea of allocating more time to art isn't a promising one for me. It isn't something that I would even be comfortable doing right now. So it's got to be the right project, or sketches at conventions. But like oddly, no one wants sketches from writers, or maybe people don't know I can draw, right? So yeah, it's interesting.
One of my favorite sketch covers is I got a Steve Orlando drew. It was I forget what it was on one of his books, but he actually drew something for me. I mean, it wasn't the greatest, but it's still unique.
I did that Marge as Catwoman for you too, right? That was on a cover. Did I do that for
I
you?
think yes, I think so.
Wraparound cover and
I think Marge's Catwoman was Erica Hesse
oh,
because
was it?
I always gave her like the pick a because she draws those awesome cheesecakes. Like, I don't know. I'll have to go through and take pictures of your stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know I've done like multiple sketches for you, and that was one of the
Yes.
like things that I look forward to the most out of those super shows is like you coming by and being like, draw that, me feeling challenged by it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you want that out of a sketch for sure.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, kind of give us one final pitch for the Kickstarter, and is there anything else that maybe we talked about a lot? I mean, but is there something else that maybe we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure that people knew about?
Sure. So, well, okay. First and foremost, go to Kickstarter. Look up the Automaton. It's probably the most quality, just inside and out, the best book. I mean, I'm designing all of it myself, so I know that it's gonna fit really, really well on your shelf. Whether you're a murder mystery fan, whether you're a theme park or a Disney fan, whether you're a giant robot fan, and like some of the work that I've done prior, like Jenny Zero, it it's a spiritual sequel to Cyrus Perkins' The Haunted Taxicab, which is like one of my favorite books that I've ever done. And then someone pointed it out to me yesterday. I think it was Ian. He was saying that Banshees, which was the book I did at Scout, the first issue sold out, but the second print's available through Diamond right now for pre-order. All the other issues are available. So if you get a chance, go check out that murder mystery. It's much darker than the Automaton. I would call that rated R. I would call the Automaton PG. So a PG murder mystery. Let's go. It's going to be great.
Nice. And so, where can people find you? On the internet or social media?
Every FBI watch list. No. How about you can find me at Dave Dwonch pretty much everywhere. It's just Dave, Dave, Dwonch, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. And then you can find my studio, which we're coming out with some really fun stuff. We're at hellbrain.com. One word, hellbrain. Because all of these things are evil. All of the ideas are evil in a certain way. So.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to catch up and talk about your project. And we'll have to get you on when the book from Titan comes out, and we'll it won't be years.
Well, the loose end should be solicited. I keep hearing as early as December. So if you want, I can send you in advance. The whole thing's done already. And man, it's wild. And my personal story for that one is ridiculous. So I can't wait to tell you about it after you give it a good read.
Well, definitely. And again, it's great catching up with you. Hopefully, we'll either meet up at a show sometime or maybe at the CGS reunion.
Are you planning on doing any shows this year?
Just New York.
Oh, just New York. Okay, yeah. I'm like, San Diego and New York are so big and expensive that I only want to do one of them a year, and I keep getting sucked back to San Diego. But I think next year I'll do New York. But definitely the CGS thing is going to happen probably March, something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Well, New York is just it's just downstate for me, and all I have to worry about is splitting hotel and feeding myself, because if I get a press pass, it's free. So
Nice. Well, yeah, I'm always tempted, and I've got that FOMO for sure. I may pop in for a couple of days. If I do, we'll definitely have to kick it.
Yeah,
Drink some of that rosé
yeah.
beer.
Definitely. But again, it was great catching up with you, and we'll uh, keep helping get the word out about the Kickstarter over on Comic Watch. And yeah, I'll get this interview out and up, and we'll be in touch. And like I said, I'll try not to be a stranger. So
As always, it's good to see you, buddy, and we'll catch up down the road. Yeah, but we'll make sure it's a short street and not a long highway. How about that?
yeah,
Cool.
definitely.
Right on.
All right. Well, have a good night, and good luck. As don't get too many ulcers waiting for as the Kickstarter wraps up.
I got my medical grade alcoholic beverage to put me to sleep. Oh God, that's so sad. Oh, what a way to end this on a down note. Jesus.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch.
All right, brother.